What's going on, guys? Way from Revolution, here to talk to you about a truly revolutionary watch. It is the Richard Mille UP-01 Ferrari watch, and it is now the world's thinnest mechanical watch. It's just 1.75 mm in terms of thickness. But let's talk a little bit about what goes into making an ultra-thin watch, because this is a category that's been sort of the focus of a lot of activity in recent years. To begin with, let's describe how a normal watch is constructed, right? So you have a case, you've got a movement, you've got a casing ring, and you've got a case back, and that all kind of goes together pretty much like a sandwich. In order for people to get to that kind of like ultra thin category, what they've been doing is actually integrating the back case of the watch into the base plate, so that actually becomes one monocoque unit. This is actually not a really new idea. Back in the early 80s, Audemars Piguet already did that with their ultra thin tourbillon, but it's something that has allowed manufacturers like Piaget, manufacturers like Bulgari, to create really thin watches. The Bulgari Ultra, which came out earlier this year, is 1.8 mm in terms of thickness, as I recall. But for Richard Mille, the problem with that was that if you integrate the base plate of the movement into the case back of the movement, you compromise the shock resistance of the watch. And it's really important for Richard Mille, all Richard Milles, to be extremely shock resistant. In fact, in a conversation with his son Alex Mille, recently he was reminding me about back in the day when Richard would first visit Baselworld, and he would take off his RM-01 and he would like throw it on the floor. You guys remember that, right? Just to show people like how truly shock resistant that was. And that was like really game changing, because at the time, no one thought of a high complication like a tourbillon as being truly resistant. So shock resistance has been one of the key focuses for Richard in everything he's done. It was the reason why he started to use carbon fiber for his base plates, starting with the Richard Mille RM-06. It was the reason why he went into the RM-09 with an elusive case, but also with titanium aluminide, skeletonized bridges to create a really shock resistant watch, and so on and so forth. So when it came to him addressing the idea of an ultra-thin watch, he had to make it also shock resistant. So what's really cool, and if you can come closer, I want to show this to you, about the UP-01 is that this watch has a traditional construction, meaning that the case back is a solid case back. So is the front of the watch as well. It's also a solid case, and actually the movement goes inside of it. And I want to show you my watch for just 1 second, because there's some very interesting parallels between them, even though the thickness between them is quite significant, right? So if you can see, that's actually not a necessarily thin watch, and that wasn't the objective of the watch either, but this is the RM-21. And if you look at it, the base plate is titanium aluminide orthorhombic. Well, okay, the simple way of saying that is a honeycomb structure for the base plate. And the reason why you wanted to do that was because that structure has immense shock resistance to it. And if you actually look at the bridge of the tourbillon, it's a 10-sided turbine twisted armed titanium bridge that allows for great shock resistance. So you can see even in this watch, which is made in grade 5 titanium, the whole point was shock resistance. Now let's go to this watch, and we can see here that the balance wheel is appearing just up here. And in order to achieve this thinness, Richard basically had to completely redesign the way a movement is put together. So actually what you don't see underneath here is the barrel is just here. Then you have the gear train kind of flowing up this side of the watch and affecting the balance wheel here, compelling little bits of energy to the balance wheel. In order to create something this incredibly thin, they had to create an all-new escapement. So the escapement actually is completely redesigned to make it ultra flat. And if you look at it also, the balance bridge of this is very interesting, and it's actually quite reminiscent of this balance bridge. So this is 3-arm, this is 10-arm, but the whole point is it's a shock resistance balance bridge, and in the center you can see it also has an anti-shock device as well. If you go into this side of the watch as well, you can see the gear selector up top here, and then you can see the place where you would normally insert a screwdriver type device to either set the hands or to wind the watch. And it's actually very reminiscent of the gear selector that you see here on this side of the watch here. So there you have a gear selector where you press the button in the crown, and you can choose between neutral, winding, and setting the hands, right? Here you have that same ability to choose between the two functions, and then actually there's a clutch mechanism that's just hidden underneath the top of the watch here as well. And then here you have the time, and it's actually the wheels of the gear train themselves that are giving the time to make it even thinner, rather than having a pinion and placing hands on top of that. And as I said, it's 1.75 mm in terms of thickness, but capable with withstanding an incredible 5,000 Gs, which is a hell of a lot of shock for a watch that looks so apparently delicate. And it was key in order to achieve that to use a traditional construction where you have a grade 5 titanium skeletonized movement inside of a super rigid grade 5 titanium case, right? And it's really cool actually that, Richard would go to the lengths of making something so extreme, so single-minded in terms of its objective, but still so shock resistant. So now I just want to show you this watch on my wrist. Put on the trusty Velcro strap. I love Velcro straps, incidentally. You also have to say, like Richard, like really revolutionized the luxury watch industry by making the Velcro strap like a thing, you know? But you can see it pretty much kind of disappears on your wrist when you turn it in profile. It is just an extraordinary experience to have on your wrist. 150 pieces of this watch, just under $1.8 million Swiss francs without tax, right? 1.77 if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, really cool. I mean, it's more, actually it's more really cool. It's mind blowing, right? Now, I just want to show you two other watches before we leave here as well. So this is the RM16 from 2007. And I would say this was Richard's like first foray into ultra thin watches as well. And if you think about it from the context of 2007, when no one was making thin watches, I just want to show you kind of like how ahead of the time he was and how he's really been a leader in this field, right? So if you can look at that, that's already a very thin watch. It's using his collaboration with Vaucher as well, which has got the variable inertial rotor, which is, you know, another incredible innovation. And then from there, I want to jump like 10 years into the future to 2017. And this is the 67-02. And this is, of course, the watch that all the athletes are wearing as well. And a lot of them chose it because it's so slim. It just never hinders their movements or their activities, right? But then to go from that 5 years later to this, I mean, that's just nuts, you know? And yeah, I mean, I guess that's what I love about Richard also. He's always been that innovator in terms of extreme performance, extreme innovation, extreme ergonomics because it's extremely comfortable as well, and extreme shock resistance. And this watch has retained all of those values. So from Singapore at the beautiful Richard Mille shop here in Marina Bay Sands, I have the great pleasure of presenting this watch, the Richard Mille UP-01, in collaboration with Ferrari, and now the world's thinnest mechanical watch at a stunning 1.75 mm in thickness, and a true revelation. Cheers, guys.